Welcome to the Ultimate Sacrifice Show, where combat veterans and Gold Star families have a voice. Welcome to our second ever show, and I'm very excited today to bring on one of the best leaders and a very good friend of mine, Mr. Jacey Callahan, whom I had the pleasure of serving with. Jacey, man, thanks for coming on.
Mike, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
So, absolutely, my pleasure. So, for anyone who doesn't know who Jacey is, he's a success story now. And we're going to be having on, success stories, combat stories, everything. We're going to highlight the veteran in totality. But also, I always harp about how I got down to the scout platoon. And the man that you're looking at on the screen is the one who handpicked me. So thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
But that was honestly, I was fortunate enough, as you were, man, to have a ton of great leaders and just a bunch of savages who were just great men in general. But something I don't say very often is the leaders that I constantly remember, and there's a specific reason for that. I remember, man, when I got to the scout platoon, and infantry scout platoons are like nothing else, if no one knows this. You have a couple to a few sniper sections, the same with your recce, with your recon, and then you have headquarters. But it's so much tighter. It's almost like detached from the infantry, than a line unit. So, long story short, I remember getting down there, and then I'll touch on what I was saying. And you were kind of a badass. And I was like, man, this dude might be fucking hard. But, which you obviously were, man. But at the soul of it, once we all got together and we strung that platoon together, man, I've never had a better time in my life. And you were easily one of the best leaders and platoon sergeants I ever had.
So, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, the scout platoon, it was the tightest group I had ever worked with as well. And the ability that, Sergeant Major Bass gave me to handpick and select and build this whole thing without worrying about commanders, first sergeants, all the things that a battalion normally worries about. He said, no, you do you make the platoon. And as soon as he gave me that go ahead, I mean, you were on the list. And, it was my job to just go and steal and take and get my guys. And being able to have you and Chris and all the fellas.
Janko, Moss.
I know.
Moss, beast, man.
Amazing. And it was the best platoon that I had ever worked with. The professionalism, from top all the way down was great. And, like we were talking about earlier, rifling through the lieutenants, it was a growing pain for them because we were animals. We were savages.
Yep. Yes. Yes, we were. I'm not going to mention them by name, but for the lieutenants, maybe we will have you on, that we're unfortunate enough to make their way down to the scout platoon. Sorry for being so high speed. That's why you were there. Yeah. We do formally apologize.
A little bit.
But it did mold you all. So you're welcome for all those tactics and lethality.
Yeah, you're welcome for our inspiration of excellence, because that's what we used every day.
100%.
Yes, sir.
All right. Listen, man, the floor is yours. This is how this show rolls.
Okay.
All right. What we can start with to kind of lead you in is what made you dive into the military? What made you kind of follow service?
Sure, man. Absolutely. So my name's Jacey Callahan. Retired 20 years, infantry, master sergeant. What made me join? And this is a story there's only probably 5 people in the world that know this story, and I'll share it with you because it's important. Before I joined the military, I had drug problems. And not only did I have drug problems, the people I was around had drug problems. And I found myself in a situation where I was not going in the right direction. And what tipped it, what was the tipping point for me and the catalyst to bring me into the military was my cousin. We were dealing drugs together. And again, I'm not proud of this, but I say it because it's important for young people to understand. I was 21 years old. I had no direction, no forward momentum in my life. I didn't know what I was doing. And he got pinched, and he ended up doing 5 years in lockup. And the sad part was I was at his house that night, and I had left, and then the police rolled in and picked him up. And I always look back on that and I say, you know what, if I was there, I would have been doing jail time too. So very shortly after that, I would say probably in the next 90 days is when I said, you know what, I got to get out of here. I got to leave this town, because if I don't, bad things are going to happen. So I joined the military without regard for anything else, without knowing anything about it, not going into it thinking, oh, this is going to be a career. I just joined it to get away. And I said to myself, after 4 years, I can get out and go on and do great things. But I tell you what, man, the first month I was in basic training, it stuck, and it stuck really hard. I had a drill sergeant that was, he was incredible. I don't even remember his name, but all I can remember, he's this big buff guy at the stack, tabbed, and I was like, that's who I want to be like. I want to be like that guy. Not because of his personality or who he was, but because of what he represented. So I set myself on a path to do that, and I clearly did in my own way, and made a career out of it.
100% you did, man. Are you kidding me? You don't have to be humble.
Yeah, no, I try to be humble. We all have.
You absolutely did. It's I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about deployments, and not only that, but combat. If you're willing to share, man, because a lot of this too is allowing the American people to kind of live inside our head for this hour or however long it may be. I know. It's like a ping pong ball.
Have fun,
yeah, enjoy your stay. But just the floor is yours, man. I mean, whatever you want to touch on. If there's a shout out, whatever. Let's hit on it.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. So I have three deployments. I spent 3.5 years in Iraq, which was unbelievable at the time. And then I spent 10 months in Afghanistan. Back in the day, we did 15-month deployments, man. And I was young. I was 21 years old. I had no idea what we were getting into, reading the news. You still can't put it all together at that young age until you actually get there. So we went right to Baghdad beginning of 2004. January 2004, I was on the ground. And we were actually establishing Kuwait at the time. If anybody's been to Kuwait, you know that it's big, it's built, and it's a whole thing. Well, when we got there was 4 berms and 4 guard towers, and that was it. And it was our responsibility to build this thing up so we could push forward north to Baghdad. And that's exactly what we did. We ended up staying there, I think, 60 days, building Kuwait, and then we had the arduous task of driving to Baghdad. It took us 4 days to get there. And, everybody that's ever been on that mission knows how strenuous it is getting up there. I sat in a gunner seat for 4 days with a 240, sitting on a troop strap. Talk about uncomfortable, but, you don't think about it at the time until later on. You're like, why did I do that? But it's just one of those things you do. And so, we get up to Baghdad, and it's dark. There's no lights. Everything's out, and you don't know what's around any corner. Then we rolled into Camp Victory. And so for any veterans that have ever been to Victory know how big it is and how grand it is, the PX, the chow hall, all that big stuff that they brought in. Well, none of that was there when we got there. It was a big dirt field with a couple Connaxes in the back corner. And they were like, yeah, you guys got to secure this place. We had no idea what we were doing. We're like, what are you talking about? Secure what? We're a battalion that just rolled in here with tanks and Bradleys. And sure enough, that was the gig. We secured Victory and started to bring in the infrastructure and building up with the contractors. And then they said, okay, time to go. And they rolled us right into Baghdad. And we went to Saddam's old CIA compound. And it was a 12-story building, sat right on the river. And, man, I tell you what, it was a mess from there. We were taking mortar fire on the daily. We were out patrolling on the daily, and it just seemed like it was never ending. And then, when I think back on it, we were rolling in no doors, light skin Humvees. We were running chicken wing 249s on the side of these things, and our biggest threat was a hand grenade, right? Or an RPG, but we didn't even think about it. It never clicked until 2 years later, IEDs came out, and we were like, whoa. Okay, this changes the game. And so everything changed after that. But I'll tell you what, man, I always reminisce about that deployment because of what we did. And any of my brothers out there that served with me in the Cav know, 1-5 Cav, we were the guys. We were going in, getting it done. Our battalion was sent to Haifa
Roll with
Street.
you, man.
Of course, we went to Haifa Street. We were in there with some SOCOM guys and SEALs, and I can remember one time. This was the most, I would say, the scariest thing in my life, and I always reminisce it because it's important to remember how small we actually are. Sitting there, Humvee, I'm in the gunner's seat, 240, trained, and I'm just ready, right? And all of a sudden, behind me, probably 500 meters, just gunfire starts going wild. And anybody knows the crack and the buzz knows, wow, it's close. And there was this Chevelle. No, it was a Caprice. It was a Caprice Classic. The long Caprice with the big engine, the huge trunk. Well, this thing comes barreling through the checkpoint, and I spin around with my 240, and something told me, don't shoot this guy. And I'm glad I didn't, because he drove right past our Humvee, and it was one guy,
Wow.
and our Bradley was up in front of us, and I don't know how he made it, but he swerved around the Bradley, got in front of it, and the Brad hit it with one round, and I can still feel the flash on my face, and it threw me back and threw me down into the gunner seat. And I tell you what, man, that was the scariest time ever. It was a V-bid, and nobody knew what they were yet. They weren't a thing. And so I'd like to say that, my first experience with a V-bid or a suicide driver was that. And I'd say, it was probably 300 meters in front of us when it blew. And it was wild, man. It was a wild time, back then. And
I don't want to cut you off,
No.
man. I just, for everyone that's watching, dude, and all your boys that you first deployed with, everyone always kind of goes back to that because that's like the first order effect and it molds you for everywhere else. But so anyone who's watching, all your boys, more than welcome. I'd love to have any of them on. But what I was going to say about the VBID is so people understand that when you deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan, are they different terrain-wise? Yeah, but it's the same goal. They want to kill us at any cost. So you're not only talking about, having to worry about every single car that comes at you and people popping out around corners and discus in the distance and mortars and rockets, but also IEDs in the road. And so what a VBID is a vehicle-borne IED. So essentially someone can drive up to you and blow you up. There's also people who can wear suicide vests and walk to you and do the same thing. I don't want to cut you off too much, man, but they started making these IEDs in the wall too. It came out a little later. Mm-hmm. So there was just a barrage of faceted different ways that they could kind of get you. But anyway, continue, man. I just wanted to let everyone know.
No, absolutely, man. I appreciate that. And I told that story to tell this is, when we were there, what was it, 60 days later, we were deployed to Fallujah in support of the first MEU. And I tell you, again, it's another thing, bad enough we were in Baghdad, we dealt with the Million Man March, but then we go to Fallujah. And then, we were there for 2 months. And it was never ending. It just never stopped. It was always continual mission. We didn't have downtime like, deployments, 5 years ago had.
Right.
And then from there, even more. We went to on Najaf. And Najaf was 45 days in a cemetery. And anybody that knows, they know how dangerous that cemetery was. So the cemetery, put it in perspective, is 9 miles wide and 14 miles long. It's the largest cemetery in the world. And at the base of the cemetery is the mosque. And that's where Muqtada al-Sadr was held up. And we were chasing him down. And it was our battalion along with the Marines. And it got to the point where it was just our battalion. And we were up front. And, there was a movie done about it. There's books written about it. And all my buddies that have been there, they know. And they always remember, that time going into Najaf. But I always reflect back to that deployment and I say, how did me and a lot of my friends make it out of there? Yeah. And, it puts it into perspective. You put your life into perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, without a doubt, it does. Hey, I've said this a million times before, but until you're put in that uncontrolled situation. So let me tell you or elaborate on what is considered a controlled situation. If we were walking down the street in a town and we got into a fist fight, that this is controlled. The cops are either coming or it's going to be broken up within a minute, tops maybe.
Right.
That's controlled, all right? It's really not life or death necessarily. Uncontrolled is when there is absolutely no outlook or no security forces or cops or someone who will stop ensuing mayhem.
Yeah, nothing.
So, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, if you're in a firefight with them, it is not going to stop until either they're gone or you're gone.
That's exactly right.
It's simple. And until you feel that, like you're talking about, man, you really don't know how to test your boundaries. You really don't know what it is. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that's another thing that I didn't bring up that you just pointed out, and it's the same across the board in Iraq and Afghanistan. You don't know who the heck your enemy is. And that is probably some of the most frightening crap that you can deal with as a human being.
Absolutely.
And, even when, let's say you are in a tick, you are in a firefight, and, you do what you have to do. You don't really know who the heck those people are. Like, you obviously know their enemy, but it's such a corrupt and skewed society over in those places that, they could have just been some kid that they hired to shoot at you. They could have been, shielding a woman, and it's just, the list goes on and on, man. I'm not going to cut you off. I want you to speak, but it's unbearable at times. It really is.
No, you're right, man. It is because it gets so confusing, and you don't know what's a civilian and what's not. We used to go down this one route up at Camp Taji, and at the time I was a EOD platoon sergeant, so I had been detached from the battalion and given over to the EOD, which was cool. I was like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
And we were running missions. Every day, twice, 3 times a day, going out doing UXO reports and responding to people that blew themselves up and VBIDs and firefights and all that nasty stuff. And now, so we're the response unit, and getting on the ground, seeing all that, it's pretty nasty. For anybody out there that's ever seen a body just exploded, it's disgusting, and it smells horrible. But without going down that road, there's a route up there in Taji called Route Cobra, and dude, that was the most dangerous stretch of road I would ever travel on, because as soon as you turn down it, dudes with ski masks and AKs. You don't know. They're supposed to be on our side, but the way that you can see their eyes peering through you, no, not safe. And I never got a good feeling about it. And unfortunately, we lost a good friend of ours. Went down that road and never came back. And, that was a tough one. That was a tough one with us. At the time, I was in the 25th out of Hawaii. And, we do a memorial for him every year on Facebook, and, old Sergeant Schoolcraft, he'll always live in our hearts. But, that was a tough route.
Yeah, man, that is, it's never fun. And actually, the 25th, I remember when, lucky enough, I guess, for you guys, there was a ton of 25th, old 25th vets that were up in the 10th Mountain with us. I mean, starting with Sergeant Major Bass and Points, I remember, and there were a bunch of others.
Yeah, I served with both of them. Yeah, all those guys. We all served together. Bass was my first sergeant at the time.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's why him and I, we had a really different connection because, he was my mentor, as a first sergeant. He was my guy. When I wanted to go be a ranger, he was like, yes, go. Because I had flack from so many other people behind me.
Sure.
But he was always the support. He was always there to say yes. And, he still is. He's never changed. He's still that same guy. He's always about saying yes for soldiers to get it done,
Yeah. let me say something about it. I hope he sees this. I remember one time we were doing something in the motor pool as formation, and soldiers being soldiers, we mess around. So it was snowing at Fort Drum. I think you remember this. Yes, you do. Yeah. And by the way, I know who you are if you're watching, but you're still my boy. It's all good. So I remember someone chucked the snow block, and I don't think they meant to hit me, but wow, that thing. You remember, man, you guys were dying. That thing destroyed the side of my face.
Yeah.
And I just immediately went completely bananas. Dude, it was just one of those things. You know how it is.
Trigger.
I just went bananas, and who the F? There was like majors, captains, and I was like, I don't give a F. And that was crazy. But Sergeant Major Bass, rightfully so, and I hope I can tell this, Sergeant Major, you're my boy, you're the best. So he calls me in his office, and he was just one of those guys that you just never wanted to disappoint.
Right.
And he calls me in his office, and I forget exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, you did something.
Yeah.
And it was wrong. You have to fix it.
Yeah. He was always that dad figure.
Roger that, Sergeant Major. And, dude, I was so disappointed in myself and for disappointing him.
Yeah.
That I, immediately was like, got it.
Yep.
Absolutely, Sergeant
Won't
Major.
happen again.
He was the guy that, no, 100%, man. And he's another guy that leaves an imprint. He's just that guy. He really cares.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and he stays humble about it too, which is great. I remember calling him once.
Crazy,
this
man.
poor guy. He was in Alaska at the time, and I was at West Point, and I don't remember what it was about. Another assignment. I was trying to set myself up for the next thing because at the time all I cared about was I want to go on to glory and be the sergeant major of the world. But I remember calling him. He's like, hello? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, are you sleeping? He's like, yeah, it's like 2 a.m. He's like, what do you want? I was like, oh, Sergeant Major, I just need to talk to you. I got some things on my mind. He's like, go for it. And he didn't even care. 20 minutes, he listened to what I had to say, gave me some sage advice, and said, roger that, love you, bye. And, that's just leadership, The guy was sleeping at 3 a.m., and he takes my call. I'm sure he wasn't happy at the time, but reflecting on it, it helped me make decisions for my leadership style and the future that I was looking for. So, yeah, he's always going to be one of those guys.
He definitely was, or everyone essentially, including you, everyone's reflections, dude. Absolutely, I see it now that I'm thinking about it. There's no question. Dude, and you know what's funny about the military is I remember how much we bonded in Scout Platoon with everyone, and it was we could literally be a bunch of hooligans joking around, just doing, silly, stupid crap, but immediately when we needed to get the game face on, we would dominate.
Turned it on.
Honestly, dude, 100%, and that's because of those leaders. They were stern but extremely fair, and they took the time to care and listen, and you never wanted to let them down.
Yeah.
And that's, honestly, man, I'm grateful for that.
No, absolutely. And I'm grateful for it, too. The leniency that I had to be the leader that I wanted to be was just incredible. And it spoke volumes for, not only me, but everybody else, the entire team. We just created this thing that Most units will never experience unless they're off in SOF or they're with the Rangers or,
Right.
They're in
Right.
that tight team community. But I mean, we built that bond, and that bond will never go away. I don't care how long time, lapse. It'll never cease to exist. Same thing with Chris Moyer. I'm always hitting him up. He's a student now, and he's going to be a lieutenant soon. And so,
Oh my God.
I'm always trying to hit him up and keep him humble. But that's another kid. He's never going to change. He's always going to be who he is. And I can't wait till he's a lieutenant because he's just going to dominate.
Oh, he's going to crush it. He's going to crush it. Moyer's hysterical.
Oh yeah, phenomenal.
Listen, Moyer is an absolute badass, but he's also one of the funniest dudes that this planet has ever seen.
Absolutely.
He's hysterical, but he gets it done, man. He's going to be a savage lieutenant, and that's honestly I love when that happens, man, because he's got so much experience going in, and he can help a lot of people, and especially in his platoon.
Yeah, he's going to be a phenomenal leader. He's going to make a great officer, and I just look forward to continuing to see his future grow. I think it's amazing.
No, 100%, man.
Yeah, so that so I saw that picture he pulled up. It's funny because I was just showing my wife that picture the other day. I said, "Look, man, look how young I am here."
Well, it was slim picking, man. I wanted to get a cool guy one, You don't
she
have a
asked
ton
me,
up
she's like, "Who took that picture?" And I had to think about it for a second. That was actually that was an instructor of the year picture for when I was a Ranger instructor, and I look back on it, I was like, "Oh man, that was a good time. Those were good times back then."
Yeah, man. I definitely look back. I'm like, man, I wish I took pictures. Oh my God, man. But it is what it is.
Yeah, you don't think about it now, but back then you're like, man, I wish I had some photos. I got a few kicking around, some old school ones.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to whip them out soon, man.
Well, I got one picture. It's a black and white. It's me and my platoon. I think I was a PFC or a specialist at the time, and this was my first unit. And I look at that photo, and there's only a handful, maybe 5 or 6 guys in that platoon that are actually still alive. But the funny part is all of those guys that I still know in that picture, we still communicate through social media. Which I think is great, because you never lose that bond and that connection, and it's important to stay connected. And that's what the big push about, veterans is keeping that connection strong. Because the VA, they can only do so much for you. You have to find your network, and you have to build around that network of people. And if it's people from your past, it's even better. I got a group on my phone. It's all the guys I served with at Hood way back in the day, and it's a WhatsApp. And I mean, they're in there talking nonsense and, silly Army stuff, but it's important for everybody because, we still have that connection. So, it builds legacies.
No, 100% it does, man. And, I know you want to touch on your transition, and it's important, man, and your exit from the military. And, you're a success now. And some of these young soldiers and even some people that are hurting out there, these past month now, 3 weeks to a month, has been pretty down and dirty for the veteran community. And, a lot of Gold Star family community, too. I've had so many reach out, and and they need to hear a lot of that, man, because a lot of that can be turned around, and I think your story's great. Yeah. And to motivate and be a support system for some of these guys.
Absolutely, man. It pains me to see, these Gold Star families. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know, and you can only share so much with them about how the process, fundamentally is. But I think we as a nation, we're kind of getting lost with the veterans, and that's why when I saw your newscast, and then I saw your page that you're starting up, man, I was like, and I spoke with you yesterday. I said absolutely 100%, whatever you need, because it doesn't only help everybody else. It helps the individual person as well, because we're all still struggling with a lot of stuff. And so it's important to get it out. I believe in that.
Yeah. No, without a doubt, man.
So,
floor's yours.
So transition, so I'll kind of preface why I retired. 2010, had a parachute accident. I had a total malfunction at 35 feet AGL. So above ground level, my parachute oscillated, and it caused me to not be able to pull my reserve because I was too close to the ground. and I had no choice but to go hip first and do an FLA. Granted, the FLA was there, so if I needed medical attention, which I did, I was already there. So I crashed hip first into this tire. I say I got lucky. I broke 3 ribs on the hood, cracked the hood, and you know Humvee hoods, they're not easy to break. Well, so I broke one of those. But the tire actually saved me from breaking probably my femur. But from that, what happened was it smashed my labrum in my hip and caused me to have to get a bunch of surgeries. Fast forward, I'd say probably 8 years. So I'm looking back maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. My back started to fail. Got the X-rays, the MRIs, got failure in there. Total malfunction in the back. So had another surgery, had an implant put in. So all these things, and I just kept going, kept nugging it out. Being hard first wasn't the smartest thing for me, but I just did it because that's my mentality. Just keep going. So I kept going. And then one day my back just seized. Couldn't move, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything. And then I had that realization in my mind. I said, you know what, dude? It's time to hang it up because you're too busted to go out and represent the Army in the way that they need to be represented. I couldn't go out and run with a battalion of soldiers. I could barely walk at the time. So I had that hard conversation with myself, and it still hurts. I'd still be still nugging it out if I could, but physically I can't. So I said, okay, let's open it up for the next guys to come in and let it go. And so April, I started terminal leave. I took 100 days of leave, and I signed out of the Army officially. 1 August was my retirement date. So going back to April, when I signed out on leave, I had no idea, no clue. At this level of rank, so I'd say Master Sergeant and above, Master Sergeant, Sergeant Major. At that level, there is no help at SFL TAP. There is no help in your transition because you're expected to do it all on your own. So you get all the information, you try to retain as much of it as you possibly can, but there's so much and it's so overwhelming that it kind of pushes you into a downward spiral. And so I found myself depressed. Really, I was down and I was hurting pretty bad because I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was like that old saying, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, what do I do with my hands? I have no idea. So I just tried things. I started doing things. I was like, well, let me get my real estate license. And so that was a fun trial. I call it a trial because I went into it full force, studied, as hard as I could, passed my test first time go. I think I got my real estate license in it was like 8 weeks. And, all the agencies that I was trying to hire from, they're like, wow, you got your license really fast and it's really awesome. You're a go-getter. And then I realized that I didn't like being in real estate. I don't like the facade that a lot of people put on. And anybody out there that's a real estate agent, hey, good for you. Do your thing. But as a service member, being a real estate agent, I am very blunt and I say what's on my mind and I don't filter a lot of things. So I got into a lot of heated arguments with real estate agents because I know the regulation. I read it, I studied it, I took a test on it, and you're not doing it right. So for me, I just didn't like dealing with a lot of the people. So I still keep my license active, and I'll help out friends and family, if they need it. But as full time, I just kind of pushed it off to the side. So with that, here I am, continuing my transition on terminal leave, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? Let me go be a bartender. So I bartended before I joined the military, and I was like, yeah, I can pick up a drink and sling drinks. So I went to this local bar and I started bartending. And of course, in good form, like anybody in the military with discipline goes in and you fix everything that's broken. All right, so I go in and I'm just like, well, everything's broken, let's fix it. And so I did that. I did it for like a month. And then we were going on vacation. So I was like, I'm going to quit. And it was fun, but I don't need that job. And then we kind of started going down the rabbit hole of, well, what's next? What am I going to do? So currently I'm a contractor, and I do logistics operational support for the Air Force. and they come down, bring students here, and we just support their training with the Army. So, which is weird because I'm an Army guy working for the Air Force. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. Any Air Force guys out there know that the Army and the Air Force are two different animals, and so I kind of rub people a little bit differently now. When I go in and I try to explain things to certain individuals, you kind of catch that rub. You catch that rub, but again, it's contract work. It's not hard, and it doesn't require a lot of foresight. So again, going back to the transition, I'll sit on the part of depression. And this is one that's very important to me because I started to realize if I don't address my problems now, they're not going to get addressed ever. And I'm going to keep going down that road where I don't want to be. And I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, why am I depressed? Why am I sad? What's going on? And, as a good leader, you internalize all this stuff and you try to find the answer. And I couldn't find it. I kept looking, and I just couldn't find it. And then I kind of had to figure it out on my own. And so I was at my heaviest at the time. I went on leave, started eating, drinking, doing whatever I wanted to do. I was going in the bottle a lot, and it wasn't helping. So I was getting heavier, and I was gaining more weight, and I wasn't feeling good physically, mentally, all that. It was just not good. And then I just said, you know what? You need to redirect yourself. So I opened my notebook, which is right here. It's in here. And I wrote down my goals. I said, let me do some short-term, long-term goal planning. Let me figure out what it is that I really need. So I reverted back as far back as I could go of goal planning and said, okay, what were your goals then? What are your goals now? And I started to redirect my short-term goals to make sense and to capitalize on that. And in doing so, I started getting into fitness. I watched a lot of your stuff, really paying attention to movements and mastering the exercises. And I just went into it full force. And in about 8 weeks, I dropped 25 pounds and started getting myself healthy again, and started eating right, and quit the drinking. Put the bottle away because that never helps anybody. And in doing that, it changed my lifestyle. And so I changed my lifestyle for the positive on my own accord, which is what everybody has to do. If you're down and you're feeling it, you gotta make changes, because if you don't, you're gonna stay in that crux, and it's not a healthy place to be. So yeah, man, I killed it. I dropped a bunch of weight, and now I'm at a really healthy weight. But I'm not done. So I still have more goals and aspirations for myself. And so what I called it was my physical and emotional well-being. And by doing that, man, I read a couple books and really just focused on me. And it was the first time I realized, after 20 years of service, if you don't focus on yourself, and they tell you this all the way through, focus on you, but focus on everybody else too. Once you have no choice but to focus on yourself, it starts to make sense and come together. And so that's how it worked for me, man. It doesn't work for everybody, but I think everybody has the opportunity to pick themselves up off the floor. And if they don't, then they need to call somebody and they need to have that conversation. I was on Facebook once, and this veteran found me. I don't know the guy, never knew him, but it was in this closed group of people that I do know. And he was having a hard time, and he was struggling, and he was going down the suicide route. And I said, hey, you need to talk. And so I said, hey, let's talk. I gave him my phone number, and he called me. Talked to him for 2 hours.
Wow.
And don't know the guy. Never met him before in my life. Different services. He was a Marine. And just listened. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I just listened to him. And I was there to listen. And I said, hey, what can I do for you? And he's like, I just need somebody to talk to. And so I reached out to the one person that I knew would never fail anybody. And he was my old chap from 10th Mountain when I was the brigade first sergeant. And I reached out to him. I said, hey, chap, I said, I got this guy. I said, I don't know him, but I just spoke to him for 2 hours, and he needs somebody. And he's like, give me his number. Didn't even hesitate. Give me his number. And he ended up touching back with me later. Both of them did. And he's like, yeah, man, I can't tell you how much that meant to me that you helped me without even knowing me. And so, yeah, it gets a little emotional. It gets tight,
Oh, yeah, I hear you, man. That's unreal. I mean, dude,
But the bottom line is, and at the end of the day, is that a lot of soldiers and a lot of probably your old soldiers, my old soldiers, are going to be watching this, and a lot of people are. And even if you don't even know either of us, and you're watching this, like, you know, Jacey Callahan was a master sergeant, and there's only one rank above that on the enlisted side, and he was pretty high up there. And the point being is that this happens to everyone.
Yeah.
It really is irrelevant. I know when you're in, you're kind of under this guise of your rank and all that, but we're telling you, like, and Jason, man, like, even doing this with you, and especially you because you're my boy, but with anyone, it does help a lot, because it's like there's never been a time ever that the veteran community, at least in my thought process, that the veteran community has banded together more or needed to band together more. And dude, I feel you, man, and that's why you're here. Like, everyone needs to be heard, and everyone is hurting, and that depression crap, or PTSD, whatever you want to call it, it's different for everyone. And some people, it just pins down so bad that you don't even want to leave your house. You're like, it's turned off.
Yeah,
I hear you, man, and thanks for sharing that, dude.
no, my pleasure, man. And again, I'll say this too: with veterans, a lot of guys turn to the booze, they turn to drugs, they turn to prescriptions, and that's the killer right there. That's the number one problem. Because I was an addict. I was hooked. After my first surgery, dude. And I don't share, these are things I don't share with people, but I'm sharing with you because you're my boy.
Yeah.
Everybody else that's listening, when I had my first hip surgery, they put me on Oxy, and I was on Oxy while training Rangers. And that's dangerous. That's so dangerous. I mean, I was out there climbing mountains and training these kids, and I was popping pain pills. And it got to a point where I knew that I had a problem when I said this to my ex-wife. I looked at her and I said, I just need one more pill, because I only had two. And her eyes got big, and she's like, whoa, you got a problem. And I said, yep, I do. And I realized I did. And so when it happened again, because I have an addictive personality, when it happened a second time, I was able to self-identify, hey, this isn't the way I want to go. So yeah, pain pills are bad. And in the veteran community, that's exactly what happens. They get overloaded with all this medicine that just tears them down as a person. And so I'd say to any vet out there that's struggling with that, you need to talk to somebody. You need to reach out, because it's going to be an end, and it's not going to keep going down the road that you want it to go. So you got to get off that stuff. It's bad stuff.
Yeah, dude. It's thanks for being honest, man. It's one of those things too where I think it tears us down even more than people realize, because even when you're higher rank, like, because there's more people that you've seen, that you've been in charge of, that are kids to you. And it's like, dude, it like destroys me. Like, especially when I saw those 13 kids. Whenever I see a kid that's down, depressed, PTSD, hooked on pills, but especially because it's most recent, when those 13 service members died and the 18 were critically wounded. Like,
yeah, that was a tough one, man. It was unnecessary. No, you're good, brother. It was unnecessary, and I went through the same bill of emotions that I saw on you when you were on Fox News, and it was like, I'm feeling exactly what he's saying right now, because it's so unnecessary that it happened. And it's not to slight anybody or anything. It was just one of those circumstances where you're like, you know what, it was avoidable. It was 100% avoidable.
Kids, 100%, and they're kids, man. It's like, it's another important point. Everyone's kind of seeing this, and just realize, like, especially to go up to our families too, that there's so many leaders in the military that care a lot more than people believe they do. I've caught colonels, I've caught sergeant majors, just bawling like little babies behind doors. But
we were too. But when you see that, you're like, wow, this is really real. Like, I've never seen this crap before. But it hits them like people wouldn't even believe, and it's hard, man. I can't even express how much your words are going to help people out there.
I hope so, man. I hope they do. And And I hope that people reach out, and if they're having a hard time and they're struggling, I'm here. And it's like that with a lot of people, all veterans that know the struggle, that been there. There's always somebody there for them. They just got to pick up the phone, and that's the hardest part because everybody's proud, me included.
Yeah.
When I was wearing
Well,
that
no,
uniform,
man.
proud. Nothing could scratch me, but underneath, it was tough, man. It was hard, and you just gotta strap up and you gotta go. And when you put yourself
Yeah.
into that work, you just don't think about all the other things on the outside, until it's
Right.
over.
Well, it's also like people mess on Callahan. Like, if he's down, that guy's indestructible. It's also like that kind of thing. You're like, well, I have to,
Yeah.
be a machine for these kids. But, man, it's so freaking hard to take off the cloak, too. And when I went on Fox, like, right before me was a segment. No, it was 9/11, 20th anniversary, but right before me was a segment that I was watching of this family. I think it was a mother and a son, like, bawling over, losing their father in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I just, dude, when I saw it, they like panned and they're like, next guest, and I was like, oh my God, dude. But that is so friggin' hard, man. Oh my God. But just to drop the guys, to drop the disguise and the uniform, and just be like, no, this is really me. Like, people don't want to live in our heads, like we were laughing about at the beginning, man.
That's
But
true.
I think now it's just so important. I don't know where this is going to go. I know that we have full intentions at this foundation to finally be a mold maker, and the one that really brings everyone together and gives people a national platform on this show, because that's what needs to happen.
No, it's excellent, man.
We'll see.
I'm proud of what you're doing, man. I think it's a need that needs to be filled, and the fact that you took the responsibility to fill that need, it speaks volumes about you as a person as well.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, man. Dude, if you got anything else you want to share, you can go at it. If not,
Let's see.
all good.
Where can we go? Oh, yeah. So we were just talking about 9/11, right? So we all know where we were, when 9/11 happened. Never forget it. It's the one place I'll never forget, because we were rigged up in jump school. We were in the shack getting ready to do our first jump. No, it was our third jump. And we just sat there for hours and hours and hours. And we finally de-rigged and got on the bus. And here I am, PFC, Callahan. I don't know anything about the world.
Right.
And I can remember the instructors being really weird and creepy and not giving us information at the barracks. And they wouldn't let us go inside. They wouldn't let us watch TV. Back then, nobody had cell phones. If you did, it was, a flip phone. You couldn't even do anything with. So, yeah, I can remember, finally the commandant came out and spoke and said, there was an accident in New York City. And what are you talking about? Accident in New York City. We finally saw the news, and all of us watching this little TV, we were just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And so
Oh
you get that rush of, what are we going to do? Where are we going next? What's going to happen? All those things flood into you. And we went on. We did our last 3 jumps in one day, and we hit the drop zone.
Wow.
Yeah, it was intense, man. We hit the drop zone, graduated, and they said you can't fly anywhere. FAA grounded everything. You can only drive. So I had $100 in my pocket, and I grabbed an MRE. I got a $99 bus ticket and drove back to Massachusetts. And one of our stops was New York City, and it was just going into that city. Everything was still full of smoke. This was only a week after.
Yeah.
And it was a wild experience. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, we're going to war. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I get to my first unit, and I'm ready. I'm like, let's go. What are we doing? And I got put on the gate for 6 months, 12-hour shifts, pulling gate guard. And it just
Oh my God.
it starts to bring you down. And you're like, what is this? I thought we were going. And then I didn't
It's
realize, once we did go and came back, the imprint that it left on me and others like me and you and all the people that went through it. It's like you don't wish for it anymore, and you don't wish for it for other people because only the people that have ever been there know the struggle and how hard it can be. So I never wish for that on anybody. But for the young people that are going to eventually see something again, just keep a level head and be smart and be prepared. Being prepared
Yeah.
is the number one thing. Do everything
good
you can
advice.
do in the military to get yourself ready to go. Because once you do, there's no taking it back.
Dude, that's great advice, man. I think something that a lot of us carried, but the only piece of advice I can add to that is you have to hang on before I say that. You know what? Let me dive into it. So you're literally you have to be in better shape than any Olympian that ever existed. You are America's lethal fighting force.
Yeah.
You have to be tactically, technically sound, and you have to be physically an absolute savage.
Absolutely.
That's kind of how we saw it, but it's
Yeah.
the God's honest truth.
Yeah.
And that's what a soldier, that's what all of us envision a soldier as. And that's what, we knew a lot of them that were like that, and, us and whatever, but that's, if one piece of advice you could have from me, I want you to carry that. You're America's fighting force. You should be the most lethal thing on the entire planet. All right, and I don't say that with a grain of salt because, I do own strength and conditioning facilities, and I've seen a lot of people, even in college sports. Like I've seen a ton of athletes and these high-level athletes. There's not a single one that compares to a total military athlete. It's such a multifaceted approach to strength and conditioning and to tactical training. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
we're coming up on the end of the segment. I wanted to say, man, that obviously we're here always. I'm here always, and I really hope this starts a dialect that we never even expected would ever happen. But also the foundation, I would be honored and more than happy to bring you on at some capacity. I'm sure we'll be running stuff in Texas at some point.
Yeah,
And
I'm here for you, brother.
and we'll get it
Whatever you
done.
need, like I told you yesterday, whatever you need, man. I think I believe in it, and I think it's important and it has value. And a lot of things don't have value on social media these days. It's all just fun and games. But the things that do have value, they're weighted in gold, and they need to be that way because people need you, and you got to be ready.
Yeah, man, you do. But anyway, man, I love you, brother. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Love you back, dude. Thanks. I appreciate your time, man.